Agapiti fili, carimari carispera, apotolentmant, que Carlos ate sesena acoma.net API review.
Yep.
Woohoo! All right.
What else?
Uh,
No worries. Usual.
Pita?
Pita.
Uh,
Souvlaki.
yeah. Oh man, I can't think of the delicious stuff with pistachios and honey. Baklava. Yeah,
Baklava.
yeah, baklava. There we go. All right. I think we've exhausted my Greek. Oh, domades. I love domades. All right. First up today, we're gonna do a four-digit issue. .NET Runtime 1545. Add password to zip archive. It's only been a decade, people. Come on. Uh, so, Aline, you're up.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Um, okay, so we want to add support for password protective zip archive entries. This will enable us to encrypt and decrypt zip entries. And we want to add legacy support for the outdated zip crypto encryption method, and also want to use the new industry standard WinZip AES encryption. We will add support for both synchronous and asynchronous operations. We will support all the free variants of the WinZip AES encryption, from the weakest one, which is 128-bit, to the strongest and more secure one, which is the 256-bit variant. And for backwards compatibility reasons, we will also add support for the zip crypto encryption. It is still being used by Windows Explorer, so it has to be there. We decided to not provide any defaults for encryption methods, so users will always have to specify the method they want to use when they create a new entry. We tried to refrain from using strings as passwords. So instead, we went with read-only spans and read-only memories for async scenarios. There is some platform compatibility notes. So WinZip AES encryption requires, or is based on the AES cryptography algorithm. That one is not supported on browser platforms yet. So the WinZip encryption will work on all the other platforms, but zip crypto is still available on browsers too. And just an important note, so according to the specs, a zip archive can have a mix of plain entries and encrypted entries that have different passwords and also different encryption methods. And we took that into consideration when designing our APIs. We started by creating a new enum to make it easy for people to specify the encryption method they want to use when they create a new entry. We have the four strengths and encryption methods that I mentioned earlier. I was also maybe thinking about possibly changing zip crypto name to legacy zip crypto or something similar to enforce the idea that we don't recommend people to use it and it's mainly there for backwards compatibility reasons. But that's like an open question. And the core of this proposal are the open method overloads for the zip archive entries. Since we decided not to use any defaults for encryption methods, we followed one rule. So any overload that contains the password parameter is only meant for reading or update mode. So when you want to create an entry, you will only see overloads that have both the password and encryption method. We decided that we will throw different exception based on whether the entry is encrypted or not, or if the password is wrong. And since you need to specify encryption method only in create mode, you will also receive an exception if you don't specify the encryption method yet you try to create an entry. There are actually a lot of helper methods or extension methods that deal with either creation or extraction of archive entries. I know it's quite a lot of them. I think it's about 30 in total. We tried to add a new password or password and encryption method overloads to keep them symmetric to the existing ones. But if that seems like it's too much or it's like API bloat, we were also considering maybe only adding support for the most parameter rich helper method. One other important thing is the extract to directory method. So per specs, I mentioned earlier that an archive can have a mix of entries that can be encrypted with different passwords. Because of that, we are not able to support that with extract to directory method. So it will only work if an archive has all the entries encrypted with the same password. Otherwise, the user will have to manually iterate through the archive and specify the password for each entry. And yeah, I think that is it. We also had some questions about it. Like if we have a mix of plain entries and multiple entries encrypted with the same password, what should happen? Is it okay to throw, or do we just not take into consideration the plain entries and decrypt them normally? Or similarly, when you try to open a plain entry but also specify the password parameter, should we want to throw, or do we want to keep it more lax and allow the extraction?
Are you asking this committee for suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, right now our suggestion is to not allow that kind of behavior and to be more strict, but it's more of an open question, like, is that the good approach or like the best approach, or should we be more permissive?
I'm surprised that you would throw, actually, because I guess I always imagined a password as being some ancillary data that you would use if you run into a problem. And if you never see the flag that says this is encrypted, like, well, you just don't need the password. Like a caller giving you data that you don't need generally is not an error.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Said another way, I would say that all passwords are valid for the not encrypted algorithm.
Right.
Okay. Okay, we can change that then. Okay.
But you would probably want to document that, though, just so that callers understand that, like, hey, if you come across something that the password's not needed for, you don't fail, you just ignore the password.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I can imagine that people would say, like, well, it's, I expected this to be encrypted and it wasn't, therefore you should fail. And it's like, well, if you expected it to be encrypted, then like it was your fault for not having it encrypted in the first place, right? Like you at the API level can only work with the file you're given, not the file that people hoped you were given.
Mm. Okay, makes sense.
So I assume that extracted directory with a wrong password will be the same as extracted directory now if it sees anything encrypted. So is that anything it could already process is left on disk, or does it try cleaning itself up when it fails. Both have pros and cons. Are we being consistent with what we already did? And for the record, what's the story?
Oh, on the top of my head, I'm not sure which strategy we chose for this, but if the current behavior is to keep on the disk the files that have been extracted until an error appears, then that is what we are going to do here as well.
Okay, so maintaining behavior.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so starting back up at the top, there's been a fair bit of side channel chatter that I've seen being very skeptical of the zip crypto. One piece of feedback I got before the review was if we add it, we probably want an analyzer that yells at people for specifying it. And then a suggestion online is adding it to the enum's fine, but maybe EB never it. And I guess another option is if there's no part of the API that tells you what the encryption mode is of a particular entry, then maybe we just don't use it. Because
okay.
like I didn't see anywhere right now that is tell me what encryption method this stream is using. Sorry, what this archive entry is using. Did I miss it, or is it not there?
No. Like that is not available. I think people can still find out, but they will have to manually check some flags from the entry. But there's no method that just says the encryption method.
I thought that we actually we didn't. We just had a public flag whether the entry is encrypted, but we don't expose the information of what method it is using currently, I think.
Yep.
But I think we can add it as part of this proposal, right? Because we already know by the time that we parse the entry headers what it is using.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, so should we add that and keep the zip crypto as well, or should we just avoid zip crypto at all costs?
I mean, do you have a need to support reading zip crypto archives?
Well, Windows Explorer still uses zip crypto. So basically everything that you do on Windows, if you use the basic compress functionality on click right, it will be done with zip crypto.
So you're saying that you have a legitimate reason to continue reading them?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I feel like we do support the Windows operating system. Just a hunch.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to hear a yes.
Okay.
I didn't want to make an inference without the engineering team literally saying the word yes.
Fair enough. Can Windows read the more modern versions?
No, there are external tools that can be used for that.
So there would be a legitimate but unfortunate if somebody's trying to password protect something but wants it to open in Explorer, they would have to use legacy dump mode. Okay. AKA zip crypto. Regarding an API that, a property or something telling you what the encryption method is, if a new encryption method were added tomorrow, would you know the entry is encrypted, and how would you want to represent it?
Well, there is a flag that tells us whether the entry is encrypted or not. For zip crypto, that's the only way of saying whether the entry is encrypted or not, but the industry standard WinZip1 has some extra headers for their entries, and we need to check those. So if a new encryption method comes tomorrow, it will probably have something different. but it should be easy to just add a new value in the enum and check what the new whistles and bells for the encryption method will be.
Well, I get, but really, it's the if the GNU zip utility started already encrypting something, what would the current API detect it as? It sounds like it might detect it as zip crypto just because you would see the bit set, but you wouldn't know how to detect the secondary identifier.
Can you repeat the question?
So somebody adds a new mode to GNU zip today.
Mm-hmm.
And then now your code runs. You'll see the is encrypted bit is set, but it won't look like AES 128, 192, or 256. So is your code going to say, by process of elimination, it must be zip crypto? Or is it going to say, this is a mode I don't understand?
It should say this is a mode I don't understand.
Okay, so if there's going to be an API returning the mode, then we probably want to value unknown, which is different than none.
Yeah.
Is that it should that you think it's the right behavior, or that you believe that you can implement that behavior?
I think that would be the right behavior.
Yeah, and can we actually implement that? Because we can check for the encrypted bits, but if we don't know what secondary characteristics or identifier to look for, then we can't really say unknown because we don't know what to look for.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, and that's what. So that was my question: is if all new future methods, until you tell the code how to look for it, it's going to accidentally look like zip crypto, then maybe you don't need an unknown. Having an unknown on a what kind of thing is this is common, but if it's actually impossible for your code to hit, then by the structure of the document, then it's not worth adding. Or at least it's maybe not worth adding. But okay, so you want on zip archive entry, you want to add a property?
Yes.
I'm looking for where the current is encrypted state lives.
Oh yeah, it's on zip archive entry. It's a public property. Yes.
Okay, so you've got currently, I assume this is going to say public pool is encrypted, which will now basically be rewritten as, well, I mean, it can probably just fast detect the single bit, but it's logically equivalent to encryption method equal encryption method dot none. Oh, we should definitely not call this encryption method. Zip encryption method, maybe?
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, we can change that.
I wonder if there are ever going to be like options passed into this in the future. For example, right now, if you use any of the more modern ones, they use a KDF with 1,000 iterations. And I wonder if at some point in the future, like archives will say, oh, you can specify the iteration count at 100,000 or something. Or maybe we just cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm just wondering if an enum by itself is sufficient to describe like the actual operation you want to perform.
I believe for now it's sufficient. I think an options, at least for now, would be a bit too much since we would only need to specify encryption method and password. There's nothing else that we can change or need to specify.
But I'm wondering, like, if in the future, in a few years' time, somebody does want to be able to specify options as opposed to just an algorithm, is your design resilient enough to be able to support that?
I believe it is, or it would be easy to convert to options later.
I mean, if the algorithm were to require some additional options, wouldn't the same options be required for decryption as well?
Depends on whether those options are specified as part of the incoming payload.
And like,
Right.
if it was just, do the AES 256 encryption, but we're going to write something down different of how you turn the password into the encryption key, then the normal flow, I can't say this is what they would do, but the normal flow would be that they write that option down next to the algorithm identifier or make a new algorithm identifier for each. If they only support 3 options, then we would just have 3 more enums. But if it's a user specified number, then it would say AES 256, and then the next byte would be like, oh, by the way, 100,000 instead of 1,000, because actually 100,000 is even low by today's standards.
It is, yeah. But it's just like how today, right now with the proposal that you have, you don't actually need to specify the encryption method on reading, you only need to specify it on writing, correct? Because
Yes, that's correct.
when you're reading the payload already says, here's the argument that was passed in during creation time. So yeah, maybe we do just get to that when the spec exists.
Returning to mode detection, someone's written in chat, there's an encrypted flag and a strong crypto flag. Zip crypto says set strong, but the others don't. Sorry, zip crypto strong is set to 0, all others set it to 1. So theoretically, if you see encrypted, strong, but can't detect it as one of the 3 you know about, then that would be the unknown state. I'm not looking at the spec, I'm just relaying words, so feel free to disagree.
Yeah, I will need to check the specs as well, but yeah, it's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, we can always just approve adding an unknown, and if it turns out to be impossible, you can not ship it.
Like the strong encryption that's mentioned, that's from the specification, that's the proprietary method of encryption that we decided not to support because it was patented.
Yeah,
And
but does the AES not
it's
set
not
it?
clear to me whether the other like existing encryption methods use it as well. So it might not be like clear cut whether that really identifies unknown methods or not. It can be one of the signals that will tell us, okay, this is probably something we don't understand, but it's not going to be deterministic.
Fair enough. All right. Anybody have opinions on where unknown goes in this list?
-1.
Done.
I think we do tend to use negative numbers for like out of range values in enums.
Yeah, I mean, we also have if a value must be specified as input, then unknown gets to take over 0. So
yeah, but none actually has meaning though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So zip archive entry open. You're saying there are 4 current opens and you want to add 4 new opens. So I'll ask because, my job's to ask the questions. I know that it's important that we support read-only char as an input so that you can have a stack-based password. Does anybody feel like we should also add string for friendliness and ease of use, or are we happy to say span's been around for long enough that people need to understand it, even on semi-friendly API? Sometimes we also have a .NET Framework compatibility issue, but I don't think this is going to flow back to framework. So it won't. Here it's only ease of use. It's not also lack of implicit conversion.
I am wondering if string or rajchar is such a common type that having it as the first argument to just the open overload might conflict with something we'll want to do in the future.
Like what?
I can't think of anything, honestly. It's hard to predict what I don't know.
I mean, sorry, are you saying that you think we should only take it with a file access?
No. I was suggesting that I wonder if we would actually want to have something like password in the method name. That way, in case there is some reason that we would actually want, say, string to be the first parameter to represent something other than a password in the future, we still have the friendly open overload available to us. Maybe I'm overthinking this. I can't think offhand of any other string that we would possibly want to pass in here.
When you're creating a new zip archive and you're adding a file entry to the table, where do you specify the name? Because
I believe there's a create entry from file that is used to create the entry, and then when you open it, you already, like in the create entry from file method.
Okay,
Maybe
I see.
there are
Yeah,
examples lower.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so from the archive, you call create entry, you give it the name, and then it gives you a zip archive entry, and then you call open.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. If you're creating it, I guess, from a file on disk, then I think we just have the accelerator method that does that for you. You never need to touch the stream. But yeah, so since the file name comes from a different place, I can't think of anything that would ever be a string we'd add here.
Right.
But like, I wouldn't call it open with password. I would call it open encrypted. If we think that we need a different method group. But
that's fair. Yeah, I'll rescind my comment.
Okay. But back to do we want to overload it with both rajchar and string, or are we happy to be just rajchar, at least until someone complains? Mr. Tobe, I believe you've been chomping at the bit to stop overloading everything?
Yeah. I think my preference would just be rajchar, but I don't have a strong opinion.
Okay. Well, I will say nobody's saying we should add it, so we'll leave it out.
Yep.
It is easier to add things than to take them away. Okay, and now we have sort of the arity, I think that's the right word to use here.
Yeah.
Of do we want to try and find a way to reduce the number of overloads we're adding, or do we just add overloads to all the existing overloads? we can't really so basically we could leave out the one that doesn't take a file access, but that is probably ergonomically undesirable. We could flip the order and put say the password, if you have a password, is first, and then we could default the file access. So we could squeeze these down into one with the default.
How far would we get if we created an options bag?
Well, the options bag to support stack-based passwords would have to be a ref struct, which is probably going to complicate things. But it would have presumably 3 properties, and that would... Oh, the same one wouldn't work for async and sync because of the stackable passwords.
Well, you would make a local copy of it before you start the async operation.
I just mean if
So you could make it work.
if the struct itself has a field that is read-only span of char password, then technically it can probably be passed into an open async as long as it doesn't use the async keyword, which it semi shouldn't because the exceptions mode would be wrong. But I feel like we have a don't pass the passwords that way, and you wouldn't be able to pass in the memory, so we'd always have to make a copy.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think for an options bag we'd need 2, and that would just divide the number of overloads. It'd be a little bit better than in half, because I think this set and this set would collapse into the same set.
Yeah, like I don't like having the ROM password on open async. Like that really does feel like that should be ROS, not ROM. Because it is data that is supposed to be transient, like truly transient.
You think that the open async should take read-only span instead of read-only memory?
I do, yes.
And that it should derive it into an array?
It should make a local copy for as long as is needed to do the derivation, and then throw out the data.
Toad,
Alan,
how does that make you feel?
Do you Alan remember if it's really necessary to have it as a memory, or whether we can still accept read-only span even for the async? Like, where does the async actually come into play? What is the asynchronous operation in the open?
I don't remember on the top of my head. I can look it up, but I think at least in the current implementation that I had, I could not use read-only memory, read-only span. Sorry.
I would assume these open methods are doing more than just opening a file. Presumably they're actually doing IO against something after it's opened.
So they are seeking in the zip archive stream.
But the
Seeking to where? Do they don't have to read anything to know how far to seek?
So when you open a zip archive over a stream, it will seek to the end, parse the central directory, which is the list of entries.
Right.
And
that part is what I'm asking about.
Sorry, can you repeat?
If it has to parse,
Yes.
isn't that reading? And wouldn't we want that reading to be async?
Yeah, that part is happening in create async on the zip archive. And then when you get the entry and you then do open async, it will definitely have to seek to the right part of the archive where the data is. And it will, I don't remember from the top of my head what exactly is the stream operation that is potentially async. That's why I was asking if he remembers.
It'd be lovely the async overloads weren't necessary at all because everything that was was purely sync. But it seems likely there's something in there. We could check the implementation to make sure we could cut this conversation a little bit short.
Yeah.
Do we support? I assume we don't support non-seekable streams.
We do, but we buffer the contents in memory. That's whole another beast.
But
That's
to buffer, we have
pre-existing
to-
behavior.
But that's happening not as part of this zip archive entry .open.
No.
That's happening, right? That's happening as part of the zip archive .create async.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Can we check whether there's anything actually async or what is actually async in these open async methods?
I can check on the background if my PC cooperates.
Yeah, it looks, I'm just looking through the implementation. It looks like it is actually reading the incoming stream during the open operation. Because it looks like it caches some of the central directory structure, but not all of it. And on demand, it has to reread part of the central directory during the open operation.
Okay.
At least that's just what it looks like from a cursory glance through the code.
See that it wants, get offset of compressed data is a seek in the archive.
Right. Anyway, okay, so back to this, and so let's say that we need an open async overload. ROM makes me sad.
Well,
for a
so
password.
read-only span of char, read-only span would work if the KDF can be done without doing any I/O. Wow, that was a pile of letters. Read-only span could be used if the public method that returns the task is allowed to finish reading the password before it needs to call into another async method.
Right.
It would then need to put that password somewhere, but we have stories for that.
Right.
I missed it, Levi. Your concern with ROM is just the heap storage or something else? Like if it was string, you would still be similarly concerned?
The point of having a RAWs in the first place is to limit the exposure of something to the rest of the application. And ideally, the way that you're supposed to handle secret data like this when it comes in is to do whatever operation is necessary up front, and then get rid of the original secret data, which presumably would mean that RAWs, not ROM, is the right shape to pass in here. But if that's not feasible, then ROM it is.
I mean, it would be nice if it could take read-only span, because again, that lets you then from a stack or from an async context, as long as you can do a stack-based password extraction from the user, you can then avoid a heaped password.
Right.
But wouldn't we need to store the derived password anyway? Because like if you have an update mode, you would need to store it, and then
the key would need to be somewhere other than the stack.
Yeah.
But the password gives you the key, but the key doesn't give you the password. So if one of the two has to leak, you would rather it was the key that leaked, or the derived key that leaked.
Right.
Passwords you really want out of memory as soon as possible. So, yeah, if it's technically feasible to change these from taking read-only memory to read-only span, even if it requires changing the code, then sure. But can you run? So the question is, can you derive the key without doing any I/O? Because you already have a property that says what the mode is, so even if that required doing extra I/O, you've said it's fine to do that synchronously. But given just the mode enum
and the salt
and the password, can you?
So I think the salt is stored somewhere in the local header, so that's something that must be read
I see.
as part of opening.
But couldn't you extract that at the same time as you extract the mode?
Not sure.
Again, like I'm
Alim.
saying, you're willing to do some amount of work either synchronously or in the async method that returned the entry. If you add the salt there, then you could be able to do the KDF at open time.
But I think you were saying that data is not in the central directory, right? It's elsewhere in the stream.
It really is it right next to the mode identifier? If not, then maybe I'm overreaching.
Yeah. This might be complicating things too much, but it is like it would be best practice to try to get it out of memory quickly. Or, you know.
Yeah, I think that the long running, given that the salt changes per file.
Yeah.
Sorry, I assume the salt changes per file.
It does.
The directory ones would still have to be read-only memory because they need to use the password across multiple asynchronous states.
Right.
Yeah. So the salt should be present in the central directory. It's present in both places, in the local and central directory.
Huh.
So it should be possible to read it at the start and not during open, technically, but that's just from looking up at what the spec says.
Yeah, because
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to rat hole on this too much, but it's like, if you can change it to RAWs, prefer that just from the perspective of get it out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
At least make your caller responsible for it, not yourself.
But okay, do we want to? Do we want to try rearranging parameters so that we can use defaults and have fewer overloads, or do we just say and move on?
Yeah.
All right.
This kind of matches the existing overloads anyway, like
Yep.
what was said above.
Yeah, basically the other option would be we're inserting password as the first parameter.
Mm-hmm.
So that it would be, instead of appending it, we would be inserting it here, which goes against guidelines, but would remove half the entries off this list.
Right.
Okay. So we're good with the parameter order. Password seems to be the most appropriate parameter name. Everything else is inherited. Right. So now we've got the open methods that take a password that are only suitable for reading, and the open methods that are only suitable when creating a new one. Or can you call the ones that take a zip encryption method even if you're just reading and it's ignored, or is this a you need to know which mode you're in to know which overload to call?
No, it will, if you call the wrong method, it will throw. So if you try to create a new entry, you'll need to specifically be very specific about the encryption method. And if you don't call any, if you don't use it properly, then it will throw.
See, this I think is actually going to trip people up, because presumably you're going to expose the encryption method either on the archive or the entry itself. So a caller's probably just going to say, oh, there's an argument that takes zip encryption method. Let me get the property that I already have from the object and just forward it right into this parameter, because clearly that's what you intended me to pass to you.
So you're saying that some people might actually take a look at the encryption method from an entry and then use it when calling the open method?
Yeah, why wouldn't they? You take a zip encryption method as an argument, you expose one as a property. Why wouldn't I just forward it right in as the argument?
Um,
I'm not going to read the documentation. I'm just going to look at IntelliSense.
Yeah, like I find it a little unfortunate that these 4 opens are opens that you're only allowed to call if you're creating a new entry, and the other opens are opens that you're allowed to call. Well, I guess it's the current opens you can call in both. These will fail sometimes for encryption, and these will fail often. So it feels a little messy. I would definitely say that calling, if it's called open, calling open and passing the encryption method for read that happens to match the encryption method, that should definitely work.
Even if it doesn't match, I would say like.
Yeah, I was gonna say
why
I'm
shouldn't
torn
it
about
work?
when it doesn't match.
Yeah, like you can do the operation. You may as well do it. It's I guess what I'm getting at is this seems like an example of a hostile API shape.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's something that encourages the user to use incorrectly when had they just done the simpler thing, like their application would have worked just fine.
Can we move the encryption method from the open to the create?
it is already in the create.
So then why do we need one here?
I believe there's also, like, you can specify, you can create zip entries also by specifying the name of the archive, and then like there's also another way of creating them, and you can use it through this API. Or you can, no, I believe you can also create an entry from file and not specify the encryption method there, and then you can use this open method to actually make sure that the entry gets encrypted.
How would that, if you call create entry from file, it's already written the data. Calling open with an encryption method, you'd now have to go reread, or you'd have to go reread the data and encrypt it this time. So it seems to me like the encryption method belongs in the create verbs, not in these open verbs.
I agree.
It may mean that we need to go, add overloads to create from file and friends, but I don't think. I haven't heard a reason yet that it makes sense to be here in open.
Well, adding it here in the open will have a single place that's used for both reading and writing.
But reading, you're going to say open it in whatever mode it's already in, which is these.
Oh, right.
So the only time you need to specify it as an input is when you're creating, which means we should move it to create.
Well, and then you would need to specify it again for open, I guess. So you would need to specify the password twice, right?
You would specify the
Because
mode on create and the password on open.
You would need to specify the password twice, I thought, because at create is when we actually do the KDF and the salt and all that good stuff. Because that's also where we bake in the mode.
But open is giving you the write stream at that point.
It is, but the central directory has already been created at that point, hasn't it? At least the entry in the CD has been created.
The central directory is written at the end when you dispose the zip archive. It's postponed at the very end.
So the idea is you would call create saying just the mode but no password, and then you would call open, and there would be an internal flag saying, the password that you're specifying during the call to open is the password I'm going to use to write the data out. Like, that's a weird thing, isn't it?
I mean, otherwise you're going to get you called create, it gives you a zip archive entry, you ask what the mode is, it's going to tell you none, and now you call open, and this is the only time that you can call a method on it and change it.
Right. Yeah, I don't like the design here, certainly.
We could also make create take the password, because it's going to have to return one of these things with like the crypto stream already wrapping it.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought was that you were proposing, that create would take both the password and the mode.
I'm fine with that.
And that when you call open here, you just have to specify the same password again. It's just an API spell, but whatever.
I was going to be happy letting them call this one. Password was already specified.
Sure.
Because like specifying the password here in create doesn't, if they've already created the crypto stream, because I believe they were using crypto stream, the password's not even used anymore.
You don't even have like zip archive.open with a password. You're specifying it on a per entry basis, not on the archive as a whole.
Yes, but that was by design. I specified that we can have archive with multiple entries with different passwords and encryptions.
Got it. I had thought that you said that you didn't care about that scenario. Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
It's the accelerators won't handle that.
Yes. Got it. So it does that. So the shape that Jeremy proposed, where you have a create method that takes a password and an encryption mode, and then you can just call parameterless open after that because you've kind of cached information about the password. Is that something that appeals to you as the API designers? Because that does seem like a very friendly and easy to understand creation call site.
So if I remember correctly, there were two ways to create zip archive entries. One was the create entry from file, which does the whole creation on disk. But there's also another method, the create entry from the zip archive.
Mm-hmm.
And our concern, like if I remember correctly, we had a concern about that we don't want to specify the password and encryption method in that one because it would be more difficult to like hide sensitive data since it would be in the zip archive and not the entry itself.
But
why would it not be in the entry? Like, it's an internal field. So let me also state, hiding sensitive data is a best practice. It's never under any circumstance required, ever required. And if the API shape has to be contorted in order to support it, then we shouldn't do it. Because when you have a complicated API shape, people end up introducing bugs into their own code in an effort to try to match the API shape. And that's one of the reasons that secure string is such a disaster. Because people end up contorting their call sites so much to use secure string that it ends up making copy after copy after copy of the data in memory, completely undermining what secure string was even supposed to promise in the first place. In your case, if you're telling customers like you have to keep track of all these different things in multiple different places yourself, then the customer is going to introduce the bugs into their own code, whereas you could at least try to do the best thing within yourself if you had a simpler API shape.
Yeah,
Okay.
the passing, if the password and encryption method are taken here, like the archive doesn't know what the password is. It doesn't save it. It does the math it needs to do and returns you a zip archive entry that maybe has a secret bit set, but like okay, so it has some data of here's the salt I need to write down, and here's the mode enum I'm going to inherit, and here's the so you run the KDF here and create entry, and
Mhm.
keep the open state in the zip archive entry that you already have. Now when they call open, they get to call. I deleted the existing ones from my notes. They get to just call one of these two opens, or the async version thereof, because they don't need to specify the password. They already did. They're just now opening the stream for write.
Yeah, that seems to make a much better user story for doing this.
So like that feels natural to me. And then yeah, you may have to shuffle some data around, but it should be an easy shuffle.
Right.
Okay.
But this feels more natural to use, less of a foot gun. The downside of this is we need to go theoretically overload all the create entries. So create entry has create entry string and create entry string compression level. So if we stick with the existing pattern of bolting on the end, then
I mean, that's only 2 overloads. It's not the end of the world.
right, but then there's create entry from file with compression mode, and then the 2 asyncs of that. So, okay, fine. It moves 4 from here to 6 down here, which I think is fine.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start doodling those out. We're down to, I think you've copied in, yeah. So ideally the existing ones would be commented out just for reference, otherwise it looks like we're adding them. So these already exist, and then this block is the overloads of the top block. So
Yep.
there, that's about the most data I can put on screen at one time. So
you could always hit enter, man.
Somebody else, I can't.
Oh yeah, you can't. Sorry, I thought you were in an editor.
Yes, someone feel free to discuss. All right. Notice
You're just adding 1 overload per create entry, blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, one overload, 1 new overload per existing overload, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That seems normal. I mean, I guess if you really want to, you could say you don't overload the version that doesn't take a compression level. You just force the caller to specify it.
that is an option.
Yeah. Because the default would be optimal, right?
Wouldn't the default be default?
Well, the optimal has value 0. So I assume it's the default.
Okay. I thought we had an entry in that enum named default, which was
I
the
don't see one.
let us. Oh, right. Optimal doesn't mean be as small as you can. Optimal means be the thing that we
Right.
think is optimal.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, like we certainly can make people just specify it.
I mean, it would just cut down on the number of overloads if we care about that.
That's fair. When you call create entry from file, yeah, that's the only helper. Do you even need to open the zip archive that it returns, or is it already written with all? I assume it's already written with all the file stuff.
Can you say that again?
If I'm creating a zip archive and I call
Yes.
archive.create entry from file, has that already
Okay.
copied all of the contents of my file into the zip archive? Or do I need to call open and then open the file and then call stream copy?
Oh, no, that will copy the content to the archive.
Okay, so in the create entry from file flow, most people probably don't even look at the returned archive entry. Which again makes if the password had to be specified when you called open back there, that would be a really weird flow. Did we have feelings of just take the hit of two overloads, one with the one with the compression level as a parameter and one without? We're just not a talkative group today.
I mean, people like API owners, this question's directed to you.
Oh, I don't have a preference, but if API count matters, then yeah, we can force like a default for compression level and reduce some APIs.
Well,
Some
no, it wouldn't be
overloads,
force the
yes.
default. It would be make somebody specify it. So we would delete this one. If we think it's worth having the extra overload, which again just means another thing you have to test, a slightly bigger IL. I assume this one is literally just going to call the next one with passing optional as optimal as the value, but that's still a thing you have to test. So there is goodness in reducing the number of overloads, but there's also goodness in having them if they make this user story nicer enough.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So getting rid of the zip mode, sorry, zip method on zip encryption method on the opens, and then so these 6 are what it means to do it on create.
Okay.
Based on what I see in API cat, which is to create entry from file extension methods, to create entry from file async extension methods, and then the 2 create entry methods on the class itself.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and then the extracts. The extracts have to take read-only, or the extract asyncs have to take read-only memory. That one's not even debatable. Otherwise, I mean, technically they could take the read-only span and they could take it. They could make an array of all the keys and walk through all the files and do all the derivations and then go back and do all the extraction. But that feels weird.
I should just like blast through the review for the better secure string. the thing that's actually meant to represent passwords. Anyway, yeah, ROM char for now.
Those are existing. All right, so now we're back again to, are we just saying overload so we take all 4? The 2 bits here being, do we have an overwrite files boolean, and actually what's the other one? Oh, what's the encoding for the entry name?
I don't actually see that in catalog.apireview.net.
That's true. Are these things that were approved but we haven't implemented yet?
Let me check.
Because these don't exist in the catalog, which indexed this morning. But only off of checkpointed builds, so if it's not in preview, then I wouldn't know about it.
I don't think we have added anything similar recently.
So are these like,
Oh, source.net shows it.
really?
Oh,
Yeah.
Skip flame say they're new?
That's what I'm looking for.
Are they not in the ref CS? Are they internal? It definitely says public. Because if this is esoteric, then maybe it's worth reordering some parameters here to.
Yeah. No, this was added a year ago.
Okay, it's not in the ref
Almost
CS.
exactly a year ago.
Here's the ref CS, and it only has 2 of each chunk. It does not have the word encoding. It does not appear in this class.
Huh.
So whatever.
No, it's in the ref CS. Zip.io compression zipfile.cs.
That's what I'm looking at.
It's in the class above it, right? Zip file, or is that wrong?
It's in
it's not an extension. It's on the class.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, zip file, not zip archive. Derp, 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 derp.
Oh yeah, and that's okay. That's I'm in the wrong one anyway. Yep.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I just clicked on the thing extracted directory and it was a match.
Right, we have zip file and zip archive as 2 different types.
Okay, because the view the catalog has is that there are only 2 extracted directories.
Because in the catalog you're looking at zip archive, and we're talking about a type called zip file, not zip archive.
But I'm looking at extensions that apply to the type zip archive.
Yeah, but there are static methods. There is literally a static type called zip file in the same namespace system.io compression that has a bunch of helper APIs that are not extension methods on zip archive.
But these are proposed additions to zip file extensions. So are these in the wrong block? Should these be on zip file and not zip file extensions?
yeah, I think so. Sorry.
Yeah, if I think that's all it was. The overloads are on the wrong type. That's all it is.
And of course, Blazor lost connection.
This is a crazy number of overloads if we were to try to overload everything on zip file.
Okay, so it looks like zip file is doing all the directory stuff.
Yeah.
So the create from files still belong on zip file extensions, because that's where the existing create from files are. But all these extract to directories should be on zip file, not zip file extensions.
But this is an example of where having a single options object would just make life so much easier for everybody. Because instead of adding 15 different overloads, you simply add 2 properties to the config options type.
Okay, I mean, we can bounce back and talk about that, but it's probably going to have to be read-only memory instead of read-only span.
I mean, extract to directory is going to have to be ROM anyway, right?
So, I mean, if you're saying we want to add one for like extract that is different than what we do with open.
Yeah, because extract also has extraction specific settings on it. Like, do you want to overwrite data, stuff like that?
Okay, so you're saying at this point we're looking at the number of overloads we have of extracted directory and say we want an options bag for extracted directory.
Yeah, like there's no reason for there to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8 overloads.
In attending the live stream, Evan Milowski, I don't understand your question, but I believe it's important. So can you restate it? That is, it says, this is important to note because the password assumption goes against how the entries work. So I need the question clarified so we know what we've missed.
Yeah.
Please. Okay.
What I would suggest you do for extracted directory and extracted directory async is make only 2 new overloads, one for sync, one for async. And those 2 overloads, one takes a string source name and one takes a stream source. And then they just take the destination directory and the options object. And the options object has every policy setting you could ever want on it, which is, do you want to overwrite data? Do you want to, what encoding do you want to use? What password do you want to use if one exists? If you have other options in the future, like the maximum number of files or the maximum amount of data that you can extract, it would go on that same config policy block and so on. Because otherwise you're just going to start blowing up the number of overloads. It's the same thing we did for file stream. Like at a certain point, we just said like, look, the constructors for file stream are just getting crazy large in terms of number of overloads, and they made an options object. I mean, please talk.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
you are the
yeah,
API
I'm
owner.
just I was just thinking about this. But this is more than just adding password support. This would mean also modifying old APIs or just adding
We
new
can't
ones.
modify the old ones. This would be
You're adding 2 overloads for sync and 2 overloads for async. The 2 overloads for sync that you're adding are string options and stream string options, and then equivalents for async.
Okay, and this option objects would only be used for the extract directory methods.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that sounds okay to me.
And you could have a similar options type for create from directory if you want. But I know that like I've been seeing a whole lot of chatter both on GitHub and elsewhere about like, hey, how can I limit the number of files that are created? Can I limit like the maximum extraction size on disk, stuff like that? And currently there's no extracted directory overload that lets you control that. But you could imagine that if you did want to add that capability in the future, you would literally just add properties on the extraction options type. That's it, done. And you don't have to add another 24 overloads.
Okay. Okay, that seems okay. That sounds good.
All right. So did I get the three? Like, are these the three things we would need, and are these the shape we would need them? Because they have notes up here that like specifying an empty password is not acceptable. They're sorry, and they were on the createy ones. So the createy ones won't let you specify an empty password. I guess the ready ones would be fine with an empty password as long as the entry type is none. So
I mean, if the entry type is encrypted and it has an empty password, it's valid. A zero-length password is a password. You're missing the destination directory name argument in those 4 overloads.
Fair enough. Yeah, so the streamy ones is that stream open and string directory or destination directory name?
Correct. Stream source.
Yeah.
Versus string source archive file name. But in theory, those 4 overloads should be very future-proof so that you can add new capabilities going forward if you want to.
Oh, cancellation token. Yeah. So, yes, going back, did we have, are these 3 options the things that we're missing?
Yeah, I think that should cover everything.
Okay. Chat asks, should the destination directory name just have been in the options bag?
Given that it's a required thing and something that you can't ever default, generally we try to leave those out of options bags.
Fair enough.
Similarly, how like file stream still forces you to pass the file name as a dedicated argument rather than putting it into the options bag.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a mandatory constructor parameter, but we only get to do that once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with the. I got the space on the wrong end of that. That certainly looks way better.
One of the nice things, and this is just a personal preference, but one of the nice things about having an options bag is it actually lets you inspect the default values of things like encoding and overwrite files. So you can always kind of at runtime query what the default policy would be.
Well, I copied. Those are good points. I copied the nullarity of the encoding because the overloads that took it still allowed it to be null. So the default's null, so you actually don't get to know what the default is.
Right.
Just given the current design. I mean, it could
Right.
default it to the correct answer, but I assume we would default it to null. All of these look like they're being initialized to default, aka the empty memory, the null encoding, and false for overwrite files.
Yeah, it defaults to UTF-8 under the covers.
So empty memory means no password here.
Yeah, which means it will fail if it hits one that was encrypted, but it'll succeed as long as everything's none. Okay, and then as the catalog had already revealed, we do have some existing either instance or extension methods for zip archive for extraction. So we probably want to consider right now adding the options bag into those overloads. I'm finding where they are. This really is like the worst class in .NET.
Oh no, it's just complicated. It's not bad. It's options heavy.
But it's the dual mode of open, like open to read and open to create, sharing the same stuff, but like they don't play nicely. Like, yeah, that's always bothered me about this type.
I mean, we could also debate read stream versus write stream, and how stream itself is both all in one.
Yeah, fair enough.
But similarly, creation options, what value or what properties would be interesting there? So you have the compression level, you have the encoding optionally, password, include base directory, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the create ones have never asked for an encoding.
No, sorry, I'm looking at zip file still. Create from directory. Kind of the opposite of extract to directory.
Oh, fair enough. So while we're on extract, the zip file extensions has extract to directory overloads, which means right now you can say archive.extract to directory. Presumably we want to overload those to support the options bag, so that the people who are calling it in the instance style get to see that there are more options now.
Yeah.
I see that the extensions class is marked as ebnever, which is weird, but I don't think that makes the extensions in it ebnever. So I think we want to keep maintaining the extensions, unless they're marked ebnever and I missed it. Because at least the MO presentation of this says the class was marked ebnever, but the method is not. And I don't know what that means for extension methods. There's also a question asked of should we put the cancellation token in the options bag. I don't think we've ever done that before.
I think it's done for like parallel class or task parallel libraries.
Fine. I don't think it's ever been done for a thing that is shared across synchronous and asynchronous.
Right.
Synchronous things can use cancellation tokens. You could decide the synchronous operation is taking a long time and some other thread has their hand on the abort button, or that you created a cancellation token with a timeout. So it does make sense. And yes, the fact that we had extract above and below.
It is somewhat against
I
the patterns that we typically use, though.
Where does extract a file come from?
Zip file extensions, I believe.
Well, just because, again, I don't see it in the catalog. So is it a non-extension method? Because I only see extract to directory on zip file.
No, extract to file. in zip file extensions, as was just mentioned.
And it has a this of zip archive entry?
It does, yeah.
Oh, because I'm looking at zip archive, not zip archive entry. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So extract to file doesn't, it takes the override but not the encoding, because you give it a destination file name. So does extract to file take the same bag and ignore the encoding option?
Sure.
Okay, it's just a thing we have
I
to
mean,
decide.
just kind of like how if the thing's not password, if the thing's not encrypted and you provide a password, it's just ignored, right?
It's fair.
The encoding is simply an assistive tool.
I'm just making sure that we don't think that it's giving an implicit promise of a thing it's not going to fulfill.
That's fair. That should be documented.
That the encoding has no meaning here because you've already specified the file name. All right, so there's an extracted directory async, extract file async. Okay, and then Levi, I think you were trying to talk about adding a options bag for create.
Yeah, it would. So what parameters do you take right now that are common across your create methods? You have include the base directory. You have the compression level. I think you have an optional encoding. You would now add password and encryption mode. And presumably passing a non-empty password would require you to specify an encryption mode. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Paste. Weird. I mean, again, making it a bag unless it's a ref struct requires it being read-only memory.
Yeah, that's fine.
But then that means that we would still want the span ones. Like we'd still overload it for span. So at that point, we're not really saving a lot of options until we add more options later. So I mean, we could do it now to avoid adding an options bag overload later. But sure, let's doodle it.
I mean, in practice, these things are all going to be strings anyway. Like that's just how people write code. And if we decide in the future we ever do want to introduce the like better secure string type, then we can just have it as an optional thing passed in here. Like specify the password or the better password, and we'll just choose whichever one you set.
Just really can't paste anymore. That's really annoying. At least not in VS Code. It did ask me if I was willing to apply an update, and I told it no. Maybe that broke paste. Okay, so you think that instead of... Oh, I missed the create entry asyncs. So create entry async can definitely take... Oh, no, wait, because create entry doesn't need to be async. There's a create async, but it does... That returns a archive, not archive entry. Okay. So are you saying give up on stackable passwords? Or that we should overload it?
Or an options bag?
Because we could say create entry takes string entry name, Ross char password, comma, the options bag, and then it would be this password wins over the options bag one.
Oh, well, creation options also takes other things like sorry, I assumed that this property bag would be very specific to the create from directory method.
Okay, so create entry you want to leave alone taking read-only span of char.
I mean, team, feel free to chime in here.
Like, I wanted to take read-only span, so I'm just asking what your thoughts were when you said make a creation options bag too.
It was to mirror the extracted directory method.
Because create from... Where's create from directory? It's probably another thing I deleted when I...
Zip file static methods.
Zip file extension, zip file... Okay, so it's another thing I overzealously deleted when I thought everything was extract.
Yeah, so they have there are create from directory methods here that are the mirrors of the extract to directory methods.
Okay, this is what happens when you confuse the Jeremy. All right. Okay, so these are... All right, so create entry from file we got, because those are actually extensions. They're just missing the this. But where's create from directory?
Yeah, I think I forgot to add them in the proposal.
Fair enough.
They're in catalog though.
Yep. This means that I have to wait for it to draw. All right, and maybe wailing on all my modifier keys worked this time because now I seem to be able to paste again. Huzzah. All right, so create from directory. Looks like there's a string and a stream variance in the second parameter, which is the destination, as in what archive is being created. And then I think we have compression level, base directory, entry name encoding, and password.
I think so.
Yeah.
So yay! Copy paste, best feature ever. Wow, we're not even gonna get to the stream thing, are we?
That's okay.
Yep, one issue days just always feel so
Well, so while Jeremy's typing, like zip folks, how do you feel about how this is coming together? Like, do you think that this kind of improves the user experience? Do you think that this is just like so wildly against how people should consume zip file and zip archive?
Oh, I personally like it more than the initial proposal we had. I think it's neater than what we thought initially, so I am all for it.
Yeah, because I don't want this to come across as like the API review folks kind of steamrolling you, right? This is supposed to be collaborative.
destination archive file name. Okay. And then now these async, I assume. Because yes, at least now we're to the point that if we add another option, we're adding it in one or both of these places, and we're not adding 400 more overloads.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the file level ones are the entry level ones, so those can be spanny, and you don't need most of these other options because they're about how you move from one file entry to the next.
And there was also a comment in chat, which is a good point, which is like this really is an archive level option bag, not a per entry level option bag.
Yep. So yes, how do we feel about the suggested zip archive creation options? Seems reasonable, matches the type.
Well, the type is zip file. It doesn't actually work with zip archive at all.
Fair enough.
But yes, I think it's easy enough for people to understand what it means, though.
We could call it zip file creation options. You don't get to create a zip file, but you get to create a zip file.
Yeah. You get to create the thing that the zip file type would have created.
Yeah. So, I mean, do we want zip file creation options instead of zip archive creation options?
I mean, I would say zip file just because it's shorter, but it's just a preference, I guess.
I agree.
You agree with file?
Yeah. It's shorter. Colloquially, people will understand what it means.
Yep. Okay. But I think these other overloads are all happy.
So do we
just-
actually... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to backtrack. So if you had something relevant to these later ones, you
Oh,
can
no,
go.
it's not relevant to these. It was backtracking as well.
Okay, so I was just wondering, in the right case, we provide a password when we create the archive entry. Would it make sense to do that same thing for the read case? Like when we get an entry, we provide the password, rather than when we open it?
What do you mean when you get the entry?
The problem is there's a numerator for the entries.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So you can see the entries and then call open on the one you want. At which point there was no place you could have given the password. You would have to. That would be giving the password to the whole archive, and
Yeah,
that would
you can
eliminate
have separate
the
passwords
yeah.
per
Right.
entry. Yeah.
It's not common, but it's. But if somebody has a file that works that way, the API should support them reading it.
Right.
Mhm.
All right. Are we?
What exception do you get, by the way, if the password's wrong? Like, is that a well-defined exception?
For now, we were thinking about invalid data exception, but I'm not 100% sure that's the best option.
Because there is some type of header that allows you to do a very quick check of the password, right? At least I guess it's not going to be proof that it's correct, but at least it's a good enough check that it's correct, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Is it a 2-byte check? So it's like you have a 1 in 65,000 chance that you had a false positive?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, two things. The question that I asked to be restated was clarified as being open question number 1, which was when it's mixed, plain and encrypted, does extracted directory fail? And we already decided it succeeds because every password is valid for the algorithm not encrypted.
Right. We should document that, certainly, because people are going to file bugs against that. Like, absolutely. And it would be nice just to have the documentation say, no, this is valid behavior.
Yeah. And then even though I think he just withdrew the suggestion, chat asked if we want to name these method groups differently to indicate that they're for the encrypted case. So something like open for decryption, but the fact that this open for decryption will work when it's not encrypted made him possibly withdraw his question. But the question is on the floor. Wow, that's yet another one of those ambiguous statements, like all meeting things. The question has now been asked. Anyone is allowed to say we should change it or not. Lack of activity implies inertia. So
Well,
open.
I think the only only confusion might be that if someone creates an archive for writing and then they open with these instead. But I don't think that really matters.
If they
create an
So-
archive with a password and then they open again with a password, which they wouldn't really need to do, right? Because they already provided the password. But it's not going to hurt if they do it.
Yeah. I assume that's going to throw, because the previous thing said this was going to throw if you're in create mode because you didn't give a mode. Now the mode was given in create, but now you would be specifying the password again. So it still feels like this should throw if you're in create. So yeah. So do we want to rename it just to indicate that it shouldn't be called in create? Pranav, you pointed out the scenario. Do you feel strongly about the naming, or do you think this is a good enough with RTFM?
I think as long as we provide it in the doc comments, it should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, presumably it'll say throws invalid exception.
Yeah.
In create mode. Like,
yeah.
So, everybody happy with that?
Yep.
Okay. And open question number 2 is really the same as open question number 1. This goes back to every password is valid for the not encrypted algorithm. So, is there anything anybody in chat feels that was raised that hasn't been addressed? And is there anything anybody in the room feels we missed? Aside from the people who were hoping that we were going to talk about their issue, or we're going to miss their issue. All right, I'll give chat another minute or so, but it sounds like we're going to say we are happy with this, and with only 8 minutes of scheduled time remaining, we will not move on to a second issue.
You don't want to try squeezing under the wire?
Considering that we've already, well, let's see, what was it? You and I talked about it for 45 minutes yesterday.
Oh, the stream one, yeah.
Yeah. And that was the two of us. So
Yes.
So that means we should just go to mark it as approved then, right?
Something like that.
We came up with a bunch of open questions.
Well, we reiterated all the existing open questions.
Yeah.
All right. Chat hasn't added anything, so moving on to wrap up. I believe the changes we made were we prefixed encryption method with zip just so it wasn't confusing when multiple namespaces are imported. We added the read-only, aka get-only property encryption method on zip archive entry to report the answer for an existing entry. We added an unknown value in case we're capable of reporting it. We would like the archive entry open async type methods to take span if we can, and if we can't, we'll live with it. And then all of the directory things we made options bags because Overload City was overcrowded. I don't think we changed anything else. Oh, going back to the original, we hate zip crypto. Do we feel that we need to do something about create zip crypto? Should we make an analyzer that says don't do this unless you need Windows Explorer to open it? Do we want to make it EB never? Do we want to say, or do we want to leave it out? Do we want to do none of those things, which is leave it in and say it's fine?
I don't think people are going to be drawn to it naturally because I think people are just going to look at the numbers and say, oh, 256 is the biggest number, so I'm just going to use that. So I suspect the only people who will use it are the people who have to. But I'm speculating.
Fair enough. We can always add an analyzer later.
Yeah.
Or EB never it later. But there was the should it be named legacy to further discourage it. And while I like that, and that I like that we're discouraging people, if zip crypto was the best of breed, we wouldn't call it legacy. So like if we did it between the time that these two things were created, and we'd be stuck with the name. So I think,
yeah.
I don't think we should be overly opinionated in the name.
Yeah, AES will eventually be legacy. Hopefully just not before we all retire.
So maybe just worth the remarks on the API.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, doc seems like the right place.
Stock as
the fact that we are not opinionated as to the default is actually a really good thing because it means we're not backing ourselves into a corner.
Yep. All right. All of that. API used to sort at the top, but now capital letters sort at the top. Boy. All right. With that, it is approved. and we are out of time. So thank you, Aline, and the rest of the compression folks. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
You prefer Aline, Alan? Like it looked like a strong
Yeah.
I. So. All right.
Yeah, well, either is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. So thanks for sticking with us for 2 hours for one issue. It does make the meetings feel a little bit like a slog when we do that, but there is a reason I kept saying this couldn't start in the second half of a meeting, because I thought it was going to go long. And, everybody presenting it's in Europe, and it's like 7 in the morning there now. What time is it? 9 p.m.?
Almost 9 p.m., yes.
Yeah. All right. I knew 7 a.m. was exaggeration, but well, have a good night, everyone in Europe, and lunchtime in Pacific, and enjoy the rest of your day for wherever else you are. We'll be back next week, same .NET time, same .NET channel, where we will, for realsies, actually talk about and maybe even make a decision on adding stream wrappers for memory and text-based types. See you then. Until then, I don't know Greek for see you next week, so ciao.